The Phil of 16 years ago would have never done that. The Phil of 16 years ago would have sat here and raged and said, this is stupid. What a dumb game. If someone else who was notable did it, it would be like the talk of the town. Oh my God, this guy's like one of the best gamers. That is disheartening. I wish we could have more people who cared about the positive. I like that crowd. I want more of that crowd. Woo! Wow. What an amazing accomplishment, right? Like, what? Well, that's real news, huh? Is it really? I don't know. Another game, I beat 2 games yesterday. I actually beat Riven Remake last night. And let me tell you guys something. Like, I don't think Phil of today, 2024, versus Phil of 2008 when I started this, I don't think I could be more of a different person.
You know, that is kinda true, but only kinda. Now what do I mean by that? Well, what I mean is, DSP is incredibly different when it comes to his energy level and passion. He used to have passion for not only the games that he played, but the content that he made. Say what you want about the content, that it was terrible and it's not worth anyone's time, that's all true. But he very clearly wanted to make the content. Watching him now in comparison is just sad, really. He's so low energy now, and any sort of passion has been gone for years, and that lack of passion comes through in the content as well, leading to dull and grueling streams. Like I said though, he's only kind of different because he's really always had the same terrible attitude when it comes to, well, everything, and from the second he could make money off of his videos, he absolutely has.
The reason I say that is because last night I'm doing Riven Remake, right? And the final puzzle of the game requires you to crack a codex. You have to figure out basically a numerical code that includes not only regular numbers that we know, but a symbol system and a second symbol system. One symbol system is just based on like, add this to this and it becomes this. But then there's another symbol system that's actually, you have to count going around in a circle the amount of symbols that are there. And sometimes there's 2, sometimes there's 1, sometimes there's double. It's a really complex system. And I actually figured it out on the fly, live on stream. The Phil of 16 years ago would have never done that. The Phil of 16 years ago would have sat here and raged and said, this is stupid. What a dumb game. Who the f would want to figure this out? How is this fun? Instead, I actually sat there and I applied myself to it. And on the fly, I talked it out publicly with the audience and figured it out.
Congratulations, DSP, you figured out a puzzle in a game from what, the 90s? That's of course not to downplay the puzzles in earlier video games, those puzzles were harder and much more obtuse, but he's talking like he really accomplished something, like he found the cure to some illness or figured out how he's gonna revive his career or something. And let's not sit here and pretend as though the puzzles in the Riven remake are identical to the ones in the original game, because that's just not the case. The puzzles in the remake were undoubtedly simplified versions of the originals, which really takes away and detracts, if you will, from any sort of accomplishment that DSP would be flexing here. If it wasn't made clear previously with his Street Fighter cope sessions, his ego is intrinsically tied to how well he does in video games, and that is just beyond pathetic for a 42-year-old man with a wife. And you'll see in this clip just how much it bothers him that people don't care about his gaming accomplishments. And I'm using the term accomplishments very loosely there as well, because so often these accomplishments in question are really just beating a game, which in this case meant solving a puzzle. When it comes to him not applying himself and blaming the game though, he still does that all of the time. Sure, maybe this is the exception, but I don't think that that's exactly cause for celebration. And it's most definitely not the cause for the self-fellatio that he is displaying here.
And I was like, wow, I actually impressed myself, because that's the kind of stuff, that's the kind of thing that would be on an IQ test. Well, you know, here's a pattern, a series of symbols. What's the next symbol? So you have to, on the fly, figure out the symbol system, right? And then figure out what would be the next symbol in this sequence. And that stuff, I'm going to be honest, that's stuff that I wasn't good at. And I actually did it legit last night to beat Riven. And I was like, wow, I've impressed myself.
Wait, that's the kind of thing to be on an IQ test, but you aren't good at that kind of thing? Is that a confirmed self-felt? Is that the self-admittance that you are in fact the low IQ individual that everyone claims you to be? I mean, of course the answer is irrelevant because you are that individual, but I never expected you to come out and admit it like that. I guess that just goes to show you never to underestimate the guy, because just when you think that he won't do something, that there's no way in hell it'll happen, he goes out of his way to do exactly that.
It's kind of like right now, me playing Street Fighter in Street Fighter 6 is the best I feel I've played competitive Street Fighter. He fished jabs into level 3, hoping desperately it would connect, and it does. That is unreal. That is absolutely unreal. The guy's not good. He fucking plays so stupidly online, and half the time I play this guy, I can't react to what he does. It's so simple to beat what he does, and I can't do it. All right, and I want to repeat that. I actually feel like me playing Street Fighter 6 now, this is the best I've been at Street Fighter. He literally played a shitty flowchart and beat me. Okay, so fuck you. You can fucking go to fuck yourself and play with your flowchart in your corner by yourself. Go play with yourself, and I'll play people who don't do flowcharts. You could argue, well, what about your days in Super Turbo back in the day? Well, yeah, I was playing at a high tournament level back then, but modern Street Fighter has more to it. Modern Street Fighter has a ridiculous amount of mechanics and muscle memory and things you need. You know, Super Turbo is very simple. Yes, I have an incredible amount of knowledge of Super Turbo, and I have great execution and timing from playing it so much, but it takes more to play Street Fighter 6 at a competitive level than it does Super Turbo. That's just a fact, okay? And so I feel like right now, in 42 years old, my brain is kind of at the best it's ever been. I'm solving complex codex puzzles live on a stream for the finale of a game. I'm playing Street Fighter at a high competitive level. I'm beating the toughest boss in FromSoft history legit without summoning. It's pretty nuts what I'm pulling off here in the modern day.
I don't know if you really want to go around bragging that at the ripe old age of 42 that your brain is the sharpest it's ever been, though. You are the guy, after all, who frequently slurs his words, frequently calls your wife your mom, and can't comprehend a Google search. I wouldn't say that any of these feats indicate a sharp mind. In fact, I'd be willing to argue in the exact opposite direction. He must be living in his own delusional reality, though, if he thinks that his Street Fighter 6 escapades are a sign of skill and growth. There is just no reasonable excuse as to why he can identify someone as using the same moves, a pattern if you will, and not be able to counter it in some fashion. I mean, there's a reason that he has to take every single advantage possible in order to even make it to master rank, a rank that I want to remind everyone he barely qualifies for and has himself said in the past only requires grinding to get to. And if this is in fact DSP at his sharpest, if DSP really is at peak brain capacity right now, what does that say about him when he was younger? It doesn't paint him in a very good light, I can tell you that for free.
It's wild. Of course, now nobody cares. And of course, that's a gross over exaggeration. And I don't want to downplay those of you who like me and watch my content and support it. Okay? I appreciate that. When I say nobody cares, sadly, it's just a feeling that I have. It's not resentment. It's more like sadness that back in the day when I was an asshole, when I was a fool, right? I wasn't good at games. I was just sitting there ranting, raving, swearing, saying controversial, dumb shit constantly, right? All that stuff. That's when I was at the height of my popularity. If only what I was doing today is what I was doing 12 years ago, 2011, 2012, when I was getting insane views on YouTube, I think things could have been a lot different. Because what ended up happening was I got known as that clown who sucked at games, who didn't appreciate his audience, who didn't do the right stuff, and squandered all of that, right?
Let's just be clear for a second. You got known as that clown because you were that clown. Let's not downplay it. It is what it is. Isn't it ironic, though, that the type of content he makes now and would have rather have done back then is the exact type of content people were asking him to make at the time anyway? This is the part of the segment, though, where you can really see how much it bothers DSP that nobody cares about his stupid gaming achievements. He is genuinely upset that the people who watched him back then will never see the things that he's done as of late. You'd think that it would be the exact opposite. You'd think that he would be thankful that the vast majority of his past audience will never see the many blunders that befell him on his path. But for DSP, it doesn't matter how many times you see him fail as long as you're there to praise him on his rare successes. What a sad little pathetic excuse of a man.
Yeah, I mean, to some extent, I do look back and I have to agree with that. Now, the thing is, I have no aspirations to be some giant celebrity or to be rich or anything like that. I'm very happy with where I am. But, I mean, it stands to reason. Let's be honest. Take a look at where I am in Street Fighter. Take a look at where I am in Elden Ring. Take a look at what I just did in Riven last night. Can you name one other content creator who just did that in 2 days?
You want people to name another content creator who beat Elden Ring's DLC, beat Riven, and played Street Fighter over the course of 2 days? I would imagine that that's actually an impossible task that you were asking for, but not because no one else is capable, but simply because who the hell is playing that exact combination of games other than DSP? He's acting as though this is some sort of flex, like dude, you're 42 years old and have nothing. Your marriage is loveless, Jasper is sick, you don't own your home, your house is in a state of decay, you're a gambling addict and alcoholic, and you owe the federal government quite a lot of money for your tax situation. I think that your priorities are in all of the wrong places if beating video games is what you're bragging about. That's why everybody says that DSP LARPs as an adult, because instead of spending time actually addressing the many things that are clearly going wrong in his life, he sequesters himself away in his fire hazard of an office and pretends like he's the hottest gamer on the planet. The saddest part of it all is that he's not even good at these games. It took him an embarrassing amount of time to beat that Elden Ring boss, and he's constantly getting dunked on by no-name scrubs in Street Fighter 6. So if his life is a disaster and he's not good at games, why does he even bother getting out of bed in the morning? Morning, of course, meaning about 10 a.m. for DSP, because he can't be bothered to wake up any earlier than that and actually be productive.
Did all that shit, a variety of challenging content in 2 fucking days back to back. If someone else who was notable did it, it would be like the talk of the town. Oh my God, this guy's like one of the best gamers. Do you believe that he fucking got, you know, this crazy streak of high-end gameplay in Street Fighter 6? Then he beat Radon legit in Elden Ring. Then he fucking did this crazy codex thing in Riven. And it's all on stream live, so it's all legit. It's not like he faked it. You know, that's the kind of shit you hear someone faked it, right?
No, it's the type of thing that streamers actually do on a regular basis. The reason that you don't hear about it is it's not some fantastic feat when other streamers beat games, because that's kind of their job. If you want to argue that they aren't playing high level in multiple games at once like the guy, that's simply because they actually know how to schedule their streams and keep their audience engaged in 1 or 2 games at a time, something that DSP would never be able to do. When it comes to the actual gameplay though, Phil really overestimates how impressive his gameplay is. In fact, it's subpar at best, and the fact that he thinks it's better than it actually is becomes a detriment to his content. Imagine how many potential viewers he's losing when he is sat there gloating like the best for completing a totally normal task in a video game like beating a boss or solving a puzzle. That would, of course, be assuming that they could even make it into the actual gameplay, past the insane amounts of begging and dead air that accompany the pre-stream.
You know? But because it's Darkside Phil, nobody cares. And again, it's not that nobody cares. That's a gross over-exaggeration. Because it's Darkside Phil who did it, it doesn't mean anything, right? It's a throwaway. It's throwaway. It's disposable. It means nothing at all, right? And that's sad, because again, 12 years ago, everyone would have been talking about it on YouTube. They would have been like, wow, this guy is crazy. Look at all this crazy stuff he's doing, right?
These must be those delusions of grandeur that he's always on about, thinking that if this were 12 years ago, everyone would be talking about his accomplishments. I say this all of the time, but 12 years ago, I was watching full playthroughs. I was watching gameplay videos almost nonstop every chance that I got, and not once did I ever see or hear of Darkside Phil. So even when he was at his peak, when he was on top of the world and one of the biggest content creators on the platform, he was still just as insignificant and worthless, even to somebody who was looking for that type of content. He's also coming off as extremely ungrateful, as per usual, because it doesn't seem like he actually values the few remaining viewers that he legitimately has. The man makes more than a living sitting here every day playing video games worse than everyone else and still isn't satisfied. It's not good enough for him that he has a dedicated audience of people that genuinely want to see him every single day play these games. He wants the world at large to give him the ass pats that he thinks that he deserves.
Yes, hundreds of streamers have beaten Radon Crema de Coco, and how many of them did it legit? How many of them did it legit without summoning or you know, broken build stuff, right? I'm not saying it's not a lot, probably still hundreds, but I'm one of them, right? I'm literally one of them that did it legit. That's an accomplishment in itself.
Listen to this gatekeeping as well. This is Darkside Phil, Mr. Ally, Mr. Inclusive, Mr. Play however makes you happy. There is no wrong way to play a game. Yet here he is again deciding what is and isn't a legitimate strategy in a video game. He does the exact same thing in Street Fighter with the pattern player, and it's just as obnoxious there. Oh, but God forbid you do the exact same thing to him and tell him his build was cheese and that he didn't actually beat the boss as intended. God forbid that you tell him that it ruins the fun of a puzzle game when the chat is constantly telling him the answers or giving hints. I personally don't think that there's anything wrong with gatekeeping. In fact, I very much agree with gatekeeping when done properly, but if you're going to do it, don't act as if you don't. Don't lie. I said it once, I'll say it 1,000 times. A little bit of honesty actually goes a long way for a lot of people. You could be the worst person if you want to be, just don't lie about it.
And then how many of them were playing at master level and doing well in Street Fighter 6? And how many of them did a crazy... That's what I'm saying. Like, it's just like back to back to back cool high-level stuff I've been doing in games recently, but no one will ever talk about it. Oh, it's not a big deal. All right, well, fair enough, right? Fair enough. Yes, you're saying Kai Cenat did it. That's right. Yeah, Kai Cenat. People said he did it in 99 hours. I did it in 5.5. And by the way, I had like 400 people on stream, half of which were all talking shit constantly. People screaming, just change your build, change your build, change your build. What the fuck? Shut up. No, I'm going to beat him like this. I'm learning. I'm getting better. Why are you screaming at me to change my build? It's not like, you know, Kai's on a stream. He probably has 40,000 people all cheering for him, right? Everyone's excited. Everyone's all pumped for it and shit. And for me, it's kind of like, I always feel like I'm fighting a battle, but it's just for myself. Because let's be honest, if I didn't beat Radon, who would have cared? No one. You know?
I really can't say this enough, but he's just pathetic. How low is he willing to sink before he just gives up on this whole YouTube thing? And this is exactly why the title is what it is for this video, because as familiar as I am with DSP, even I'm genuinely surprised of just how pathetic that he sounds right now. And somehow Kai Cenat got dragged into DSP's little self-loathing pity party that he's throwing for himself. I guess he just doesn't understand that the reason people were rushing him to beat the boss and not Kai is because people actually like Kai. He also fails to understand that him taking ages and failing constantly was part of the appeal. It was part of the gimmick. Don't get me wrong, he was genuinely bad at the game, like incredibly bad at the game. But it was 100% working for the content rather than against it. DSP failing 100 times on the other hand doesn't work for the content, and that falls all on DSP. Because as always, in the face of defeat, he seethes and molds instead of trying to actually, I don't know, entertain his audience, that thing that he's supposed to be doing. I mean, how long can you sit there and listen to this old man complain about the same boss before it becomes tiresome and just grating?
But it's fine. I understand. I'm not who I used to be, that's for sure. It's just kind of like, you got to accept it. It's resignation. It's like, yeah, it is what it is. If this happened 12 years ago, things would have been very different, but it's just, you know, 12 years ago, I was an idiot, right? I was a complete moron, and I acted like a fool, and I didn't take a look at industry changes coming, and I didn't want to listen to feedback to improve, and I didn't want to listen to what my fans were telling me. I did a bunch of stuff that was wrong if I wanted to grow or at least stay where I was, right? And then I just had a big string of bad luck when it came to becoming kind of a negative meme on the internet, and it's all history now. You know what I mean? It's all history. So I'm kind of like, I've accepted all of it. You know, at 42, I'm happy where we are.
Apparently you aren't though, because you're actively complaining about it right now on the stream. Crazy to attribute his lolcow status as a string of bad luck instead of a direct result of all of the horrible ways he's behaved over the years though. I guess that is DSP's MO, to take zero responsibility and blame anything and everything in his way.
I like the fact that we have a good time together no matter what I play, but it does, I mean, like to give you some perspective here, even in the last 10 years, you know, when I was playing Bloodborne, when I was playing Dark Souls 2 and 3, when I was playing those games, it had a big fight feel. I guess that's the best way to describe it. It had those events had a big fight feel to them. Now I don't really get that anymore. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, nah. Like when I was fighting the epic bosses in those games, it was like, oh, everyone's gonna be on stream, everyone wants to see it. Then it's like, I beat him, it's no big deal. And that kind of sucks. I wish that there was a better feeling of hype and a better feeling of excitement behind this stuff, but I don't really get it anymore. I think it's because, number one, I've been doing this for 16 years, and number two, because let's be honest, I just don't get that level of positivity behind me anymore. I don't, yes, there are people rooting for me, and I'm happy that I have the small positive fan base that I have, but it does kind of suck.
Surprising to hear him actually acknowledge, though, that the reason he doesn't get the big fight feel anymore is in part on him. He says that it's due to him being a content creator for 16 years, but it doesn't take a neurosurgeon to know that it's because he doesn't enjoy his job or these games. It's so obvious to everyone that watches his content that he doesn't want to be there, and that directly feeds into why he doesn't have the positivity of the chat behind him like he thinks he deserves. Because it's incredibly hard to get behind someone who has no real excitement in what they say, somebody who has no passion for the things that they're talking about. Passion and positivity are not things that you can fake, or rather not something that DSP can convincingly fake, no matter how much he tries. So it really shouldn't be news to anybody that because they can tell he doesn't want to play the game and that he wants it to be over as fast as possible, that they also just want it to end. They also want it to be over as fast as possible. That's why so many people in his chat are constantly hand-holding him. That's why they're constantly feeding him these cheese builds so that he can get through these games as fast as possible and move on to the next one, which is exactly what he wants.
If I had quit on Radon and said I'm not doing it, that would have been news. But because I beat him legit in 5.5 hours, that will never be news, right? So I think you understand where I'm coming from now, right? If I rage quit Street Fighter 6 and have a bad day, that's news. If I play the best stream I've ever done in Street Fighter 6, getting crazy wins, getting to over 1,600 ranking points, that's not news. Nobody cares. You see? Everyone just wants the toxic and the negative. No one cares about the positive. That is disheartening. I wish we could have more people who cared about the positive. I like that crowd. I want more of that crowd. And sadly, it's rare that we really get that these days, because we people who root against me rather than for me. And that's frustrating, you know?
I thought that you were the king of hate, though. I thought that you used the hatred to fuel you and rise to the occasion.
Where did the king of hate moniker come from? It came from a million bajillion years ago, like the early to mid 2000s, when I used to be heavily into the fighting game community. And people used to hate on me, and I said, well, I would master that hate, and I will turn it into a positive and make it so that people who hate on me motivate me more to do better. And it really did. People hated on me in the Street Fighter community. I ended up doing much better in tournaments and stuff because of it. I was like persevering over it.
Now it's disheartening? Now it bothers you that people want to see you fail? And again, he's expecting these people to care about him doing totally normal things that game streamers do every single day. On the rare occasion that he does actually find some success, there's no hype, no energy, or interest on his behalf. How can you expect your audience and your chat to be excited when you yourself aren't even excited? Why would anybody want to rally around somebody that when they finally do find success often just gives no reaction, or they begin gloating as if they're the best to ever exist? That's one of the many reasons why people prey on his downfall the way that they do, because somehow he's more entertaining, more engaged, and less obnoxious when he's doing poorly as opposed to when he's doing well. If he wanted more positivity, you'd think that he would actually take action to reinforce positive behaviors, that he would actually go out of his way to engage with the people that are exhibiting the behaviors that he wants. But instead, more often than not, the only time you actually get anything out of DSP is when you're detracting. And let's just be completely honest for a second. Phil is just outright unlikable as a person, for the most part. He's loud, dumb, obnoxious, arrogant, ignorant, self-obsessed, inconsiderate. The list really does go on, but you get the point. I think a lot of people find it far easier to bond over a common dislike for someone rather than a common like for someone. So that does absolutely play a part into some of the hate that he gets. He's an obvious target who, for the most part, deserves all of the negative things that people say about him, to a limit, of course. But the only person that's actually in charge of all of the characteristics that make him unlikable is him. If he wanted to change those so that people view him in a positive light, be my guest, but I don't see that happening anytime soon. Or ever, for that matter.
But I guess that's life, right? What's the saying? You either die a hero or you live long enough to see yourself become a villain. So I used to be the hero everyone rooted for, and now I'm still around, I'm still resilient, I'm still making content, I'm literally doing more difficult accomplishments than I've ever done before, but now everyone just sees me as the guy to root against, right? So it just changes. It is what it is, I guess. People want me to be the heel. They want me to be the villain. I don't necessarily want to be the villain, but it seems like that's the role that life has given me. And so, what do? I guess you roll with it. But the thing is, I'm definitely not going to be playing up that. I'm not going to be Mr. Drama. I'm not going to be some guy who becomes a heinous person on the internet saying awful things. And, I'm not going to do that. I could. People told me to do that ages ago. And I was like, nah, I am who I am. I'm not going to become one of these people who's just a toxic jerk. I'm not going to do it. I'm just going to stick to where I am. Again, I'm happy where I am.
He keeps saying that he's happy right where he is, but that's just not the vibe that I'm getting, because usually people who are happy don't have to constantly tell you that they are happy. And for some reason, DSP feels inclined at every junction possible to tell everyone how satisfied and happy he is in his life. I do find it incredibly amusing that he claims that he won't be a toxic jerk and lean into the bit when he's constantly acting out and being toxic regardless. I was once one of those people that thought if DSP leaned into being toxic, that he would make more money, that he would have a bigger audience, that if he really did try and play the heel, that he would get more opportunities. But as I watch more and more of the guy, I realize he couldn't ever pull that off. He's just a horrible actor, and despite thinking that his entire life is pro wrestling, the dude can't sell to save his life. Anytime he tries to play into something, it's just obvious and very inauthentic, ruining any fun there was to be had. Unfortunately for him, and fortunately for us, I guess, as detractors, this is about as far as DSP's skill set will probably ever get him. This is his lot in life, and there's just no changing it. It's just a shame that the pity parties that he throws himself are already this pathetic at the age of 42. I can't imagine what they're gonna look like 5 years down the road when he's in the exact same position, just 5 years older and probably with a smaller audience.
It's just crazy to me because this really have been a couple intense days. Super intense day of Street Fighter, intense day of Elden Ring, and then at the same time, one of the craziest puzzles I've ever solved in a video game. Probably the hardest. Like, that codex was seriously tough to figure out. And then it's like, that no one cares. No one's even saying a word about it. No one gives a shit. What are people talking about? That a pro wrestler, Mansoor, tagged me on Twitter. Woo! Wow. What an amazing accomplishment, right? Like, what? Well, that's real news, huh? Is it really? I don't know. Whatever. Anyway. Oh, no, I know. And I'm not shit-talking Mansoor. He's a great guy. He was actually very nice. He actually quoted a whole bunch of stuff. Like I said, he quoted the crouch jump from Black Mesa playthrough. He quoted the song Do You Call My Name by Raw from Raw, who was the song I used to use in my Hateful Truth reviews. So he's actually a legit fan. Which is nice to know that I actually have legit fans out there who probably are the silent majority. People who are my fans don't speak up because they don't want to be harassed by the insane people who stalk me and everyone else around me who's positive. So I get that. I really do.
I don't think that Mansoor is a DSP fan. In fact, I'll just go out on a limb here and say it, he's not a fan. And if he was, I don't think that he would be some sort of silent fan for fear of being harassed for his opinion on a YouTuber. The guy is actually a professional athlete and has far more important things to think about than whether people think he's a dent for enjoying DSP. It is absolutely peculiar though that he did tag DSP, and that's why people are talking about it. That is actually interesting and out of the norm. You can see how that would be more of a topic for conversation as opposed to the totally normal playthrough of Elden Ring DLC, which most streamers at this point have already beaten. You can see how that's a far more interesting topic than DSP's completion of Riven, which the entire time he was handheld, and when it came time for the final puzzle, it was a simplified version of the original. But go ahead, Phil, keep whining and crying. It's a great look on you, and I'm totally not being facetious. Speaking of great looks though, the comments from my last video, so shout out to the 60 skulls of course. Harley Wood says, DSP saying nearly the exact same thing as Will Smith to BITW Awesome is extra ironic considering how much of a problem Phil had with Will Smith doing that in a public style setting. Pretty funny. I thought that I vaguely remembered DSP taking an issue with the way that Will Smith handled things, so I'm glad that you could confirm that for me. Will Smith nonsense aside, it was never a good look for DSP to outright threaten anybody on his stream like that, considering there is nothing that he can actually do other than ban a bunch of accounts that can be made indefinitely. Sounds like a totally worthwhile to use all of that extra time that he claims that he doesn't have. Dead Exo saying, anything Phil says is a poor attempt to seem a victim and invite pity. He certainly can't let a good tragedy go to waste. And that's kind of the craziest thing, is that this might be a good tragedy for DSP, but to everybody else, it's just the fact that his wife is going to be home a little later. What really could have gone on? And due to him being so vague, the only thing that people can come up with is that she's going to be cooking dinner a little later, which, if you think about how DSP reacted, is so much more pathetic. And Paul Turner says, I would say that the reason Phil feels powerless in his life is the same reason why he only puffs out his chest when there's no direct opposition to his pathetic tantrums. He's a coward, and he refuses to assume any responsibility for his life. And I really couldn't agree any more with that statement. DSP might be a lot of things, but if he's nothing, he's still a coward, and he always will be. He's proven that numerous times throughout his history, and for some reason, he just keeps reminding everybody at every opportunity that he gets. I would say that I hope one day DSP turns his life around and he figures out how to act like an actual human being, but unfortunately, all hope was lost a very long time ago. DSP is a lost cause. There's no saving him. On the other end of that spectrum, though, people who aren't lost cause is everybody who watched this video, so thank you guys so much, especially if you made it this far. Hopefully, I'll catch all of you guys in the next video, but until then, make sure that you check out other detractor content and dive deeper into that. Snortex.
Woo! Wow.